Another Do Not God video presentation. And yes, more modern mystic on the subject of the brain. He titled this video Whatever It Takes, but the titles seldom have anything to do with the video, so who knows what we're going to get. And such.
Right, here we go again. Hello, Axion. Yeah, 17 minutes into selfies, no sign of the no eye angle yet. It kind of makes me doubt myself, and I go, is it like I'm neurotic and I'm seeing it everywhere? But I think it'll come. I hope it does anyway.
No idea what that is.
Aspie Rich just gives me bad vibes, basically. Just like Gary and Mendham, who linked to a video he's made as a reply. And I thought, oh, God, I don't want to. And I thought, it's only polite, he's linked to it. So I said to myself, give him as long as it takes till you know. And it was less than a minute. I could...
Whatever that means. So, you know, just evasion, nonsense, mush, bullshit. Fine, whatever. You know, this whole personality conflict horseshit is so fucking childish of you. It's just too silly. And it's really silly to say, I'm not going to address the idea, okay, that there is a distinction between thoughts and feelings, sensations. And that, yes, of course, sensations are completely illogical, have no rational purpose beyond the assignment of value. And that's it. We don't get to rationally assign value to our feelings. If we could, then we would make dying feel fun. No, we're not allowed to do that. We can't make, horrible injury feel great. If we would push the button or turn the dial, logically we'd say, why the hell ever have a nasty feeling? We'd worm our way out of it. We're not allowed to do that. And thinking is actually putting logical things together. Tree looks like bushes, looks like really tall grass, connecting these things that look alike. And it's a completely sensible process that has nothing to do with barking or bullshit. It has to do with logic and science and making pattern out of disorder. And that's where our brains, that's why there's so many neurons. It's because it takes work to make pattern out of disorder. And you're just negating all these subjects and just saying they're not of any interest. They're not of any relevance. No, they're a lot of relevance. But fuck you.
Turn it off because it was just obviously an excuse just to push his own angle again.
What are you pushing but an angle? I mean, this is just so fucking stupid. It's just, how can you be this duplicitous? I mean, really, you're just such a duplicitous hypocrite. You're pushing an angle, suggesting to people they take a panacea, that they actually inject themselves with opium. If it's not addictive opium, take it all day long. Yes, just live in a delusion. Live in nothing. Live in just a silly manufactured bliss. Pay absolutely no attention to any facts about your existence and just feel good. You aren't selling shit? Of course you're selling shit. Whatever. Doesn't matter.
And just like Aspie Rich will. So go with the Aspie Rich word. Basically, Gary Mendham's word could be summed up as intelligence. Aspie Rich has gone for reasoning. Brains can do reasoning. To me, both of them, it's just an excuse to big up the art.
So again, he's saying my brain being able to recognize the distinction, the connection between, say, tiger and lion is bigging it up. The idea of I could learn something about evolution and bone structure and find out that whales are hippopotamuses, manatees and such. That this is just bigging up. That this isn't the key function of the brain. So it's actually the key, main, almost there is no other function for this purpose of this brain to do than to reason a good model of reality. The purpose of the brain is to make us capable of navigating the world efficiently without hurting ourselves, without fucking up. And the whole process of reasoning is this whole argument about the fact that there are valuable ways you can say that. You can say somebody high jumps better. They have a better technique. Somebody pole vaults better. They have a better technique. Somebody plays chess better because they have a better technique. And this asshole sit there and say there's something valuable in that, but he won't see it when you're talking about society or culture or anything else. He thinks everything else is dog barking except playing chess. That's the only place where, yes, logic is important. Strategies are important. Using your brain to figure all these things out is really important. But it's not important in real life. I mean, what a pile of shit. I mean, sorry, it's laughably stupid. I mean, your duplicity. If I put your standards on you, you would mock yourself into a hole into the ground. You'd be just so full of it. Who the hell are you and what the fuck are you talking about? The very function of the brain is to do logic and reasoning. And to do it well versus do it badly. Shit.
Again, and obviously their own particular eyes, as in, yes, there is the... thinking.
There are facts. Yeah, there are facts in the world, and we glean them and then order them. And that's a really rational, decent, correct function of a brain, is to do that well. Just like playing chess well. Just like building a birdhouse well. Do it well. Oh, shit.
Thinking fast and thinking slow. Thinking fast is just what the animal brain does, but I can do understanding and reasoning and intelligence. It's a game basically, and it's kind of a word game. Let's talk about reason and intelligence, but it's really just an excuse to talk about me, the art.
Right. So this is the big joke, right? In the video, I'm talking about how my brain is just a bowl. Okay, it's just a mixing bowl. There's nothing else to it. And if I'm either lucky to have good ingredients thrown into the bowl, or I'm not lucky and I don't have a good fork and I can't stir it right and blah, blah, blah. I'm given a shitty stick to and a shitty bowl with dents and holes in it. But he didn't watch the video, so he doesn't know any of this was said in the video. Because it's just an asshole. I mean, frankly, why reference a video when you're going to sit there and not even play it? I mean, for fuck's sake.
Look what I can do.
And he calls that being courteous. Yeah, right.
And that is the subject, whether the I actually exists or not. Not what the I can do. It's a bit like talking to economists.
What a yob.
If you start talking to economists, you're wasting your time, because they will drag you into the minutiae of economics. And as soon
yeah, well, some of it needs minutiae, but I mean, it's really not minutiae. The amount of cash that has actually been printed by the Federal Reserve versus the amount of money actually in the Federal Reserve, okay, in uncashed checks, these are all important bits of minutiae. How many bond obligations we actually have, and how impossible it is to sell those bonds in a declining economy, and how you can't, when you're issuing bonds when the markets are going down, that's really trouble.
As soon as you're into the minutiae of economics, you're kind of accepting the premise. Same with psychologists. You're accepting the premise that their subject is valid. Economics is valid, or psychology, trick cyclists, it's valid. As soon as you go in and talk to them, you're validating their subject. When
So that's absolutely nonsense, right? I'm listening to your video, and I'm not in any way validating any crap you're saying about the meaning of any of this, or how would you apportion attention to the brain function, and what's more important, how you affect the world or how you affect yourself. Obviously, I think you answer those questions in the most imbecilic, immature, childish, silly, dopey way any human being could ever possibly answer the questions. You answer them like a little selfish 2-year-old. 3-year-old. What numbers when you first can say, give me, gimme, gimme? You're not any better than that 3-year-old. You haven't learned anything.
Your subject might well be, your subject is not valid. And that's what I'm saying to the I people. Your subject isn't valid. To economists, most all of your subject isn't valid.
So, of course, I'm not an I people, okay? only in the sense that I'm saying there's absolutely no connection between my computer and yours. We don't have a cable connecting us. We don't have any kind of hardwire programming connection or operating systems. Nothing is connected. And the only thing connected is its output, okay, what's on the screen. And that's the only way the two are connected. So it would be idiotic for me to say it's one computer. Wouldn't make any sense. They're clearly individual computers with individual programming making individually different arguments about what the facts are and how they should be ordered. And so why shouldn't I call yours a yours and mine a mine, or Mystic Gary or whatever? Why would I not do that, Nick? Why is it against the law to label the device doing the calculations?
And same to trick cyclists. Your subject isn't valid. So never get into discussing with people when you really think that their overall subject is not valid, because you're just kind of going over onto their terms and arguing their little points. And there's nothing.
No, you're dealing with reality, because reality is these conflicts. You think you have all the right answers, and you're just so arrogant, because you're also arguing that everybody else is wrong. But you won't prove it, you won't demonstrate, you won't argue it. You're the coward lawyer here. I'm the lawyer saying, let's argue the fuck out of it. I'll argue every single piece of shit on that table that you say add up to 7. I'm saying it doesn't add up to anything like 7. And you're the one who just won't go through the math. You won't stand around and watch us put it in the adding machine and crank, and add it up. Because you'll lose. And that's why you're doing this bullshit. Because you don't have any rational excuse, and the bottom line is you're just a religious kook. Some kind of Buddhist bullshit. You think that's the answer. Ignore life. There, you win. The world loses, you win. Great. Great answer, shithead.
Better for them. That's just all that they want, because it validates them up the wazoo. But if it gives you pleasure, go and do it. But I've got to a time in my life that my radar goes on and just goes, no, thank you very much.
Right. So any of you people who are in Nick's conversations, you should be fairly aware of just what a weasel he's being and call him on it. I mean, there's really just no excuse for him to make these I'm proclaiming Nick is right. That's what he's saying. And then he claims I'm not an egotist. Oh, bullshit. Just bullshit. You're right because you say you're right, but you don't prove it. You're not willing to go through the evidence. Again, do you really think he has a counter-argument to the idea that what you do to the world is obviously more important than what you do to yourself? You're only one brain. You can only torture one brain. In the world, you can torture 100,000 people. You could go to a big old football game or something with your blue laser beam, and you blind everybody, and they never even knew you did it. There could be 100,000 blind people tomorrow. What the fuck? You can shoot the botulism into the drinking water or some other kind of horse shit. I mean, fuck this nonsense that, it only matters how you feel. It doesn't matter what you're doing to the world or how it feels after you gave it your medicine.
Marty, yeah. Oh dear, yeah. Okay, so we can link Mark and Axion here. And a little note to Will, if you're still watching. See, I'm a nice person, aren't I? The videos are quite nicely presented, and it's a very interesting subject. Know thyself, as the Greeks said 2,300 years ago. Know thyself. There's nothing more important in life.
Yeah, but don't know the world. So again, just to say, I mean, knowing thyself doesn't mean anything to the Greeks unless what knowing yourself was the implication of knowing yourself was just humbled and knowing how insignificant you are and how you're just one player in a huge goddamn game. And that knowing yourself is knowing that your obligation really is to the future self, to all the other selves who are going to arrive here on this planet the same way you did. The aliens are just going to drop you here. And those lives are many more than yours. And it's obviously weighs more than you do. That's knowing yourself.
Nobody wants anything to do with it. I struggle to now, get 100 views? Do not write a book on this, because you'll just get crucified, basically. You get killed. Nobody wants to have anything to do with it.
So I don't think that's true. Obviously, it is a little weighty, I suppose, and there is a huge context. I mean, it took us a lot of time, weeks of conversation to get comfortable, even with the terminology. So that's the, there's a little bit of a, it's like learning how to swim. Before you're really comfortable in the water, you got to learn how to swim. And so the first few times aren't too much fun. So that's sort of, I guess you'd argue that the people who are going to be put off because they have to do a little work to get comfortable in this water, that's the analogy I would use. But I think there's plenty of people hungry for conversation that gets to the core of what it is to be alive and knowing oneself. I think those are important concepts to a lot of intelligent people. Just, you're doing it badly, Nick, in the sense that you're doing it as a nihilist religious kook. Yeah, so I wouldn't like listening to you. I mean, if I didn't know you and we didn't have all this history, yeah, I'd say, fuck even working on this guy. It's no point. He's just a preacher for a pile of ragged old ideas.
Yeah, so don't bother. But thanks for getting this far if you have. So Mark and Axiom. Mark's gone for what in the will book would be Swami Ramalama Ding Dong. Will went for the person that believed in Swami Ramalama Ding Dong, and was she mad or not, and then came to the conclusions that you'll find in the book. But here Mark's gone for Adyashanti, who's representing what we used to call in the old days the Lisa problem. Lisa, Adyashanti, Ramalama Ding Dong, whoever it is, Swamiji, whatever.
So this is the veiled Buddhist references in here somewhere. I don't know what they're for. The gurus, good gurus, bad gurus, knowing, not knowing. You don't even know what the hell they're saying here. They for it or against it. Who knows?
And it's the same. Are they mad? Are they crazy? What's going on in their brain? I should really come back to that as well. But let's go for Amazon. Actually, let me read more. Post-action justification. How can we bring this in? So, as I said to Mark, the last time in the blogs, I went for the Adyashanti Lisa people. It's kind of a brain damage. There's something gone, click in the circuitry of their brains and their story. What is now? You see, I've got now the new will store parameter going because I don't know. It's just because it's new, but I think its explanatory value is just enormous. It just sits me down and just gives me this package, which is just enormously powerful to me. There's a brain. Again, I'm going to repeat, but there's the brain, there's the story, and sometimes the I is put into the story by the brain. The brain creates the story, and the brain creates the I that puts into the story. So I said in the old days that it was a brain damage for Lisa Adyashanti, Swamiji types, that something had gone wrong in the circuitry.
All right, so I don't know what he's talking about. So there's these Lisa thing is like these pretty hot chicks that do yogi or something and pretend they're enlightened and, blah, 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 blah. And, in touch with their inner self and blah, 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 blah. And they can make their nipples hard without even trying or some kind of bullshit. I don't know, like I said, at 1 minute he seems to be falling for that crap and saying, yeah, that's nirvana or something. And the next minute he's mocking it as dogs barking. So I don't know what he's saying. I have no idea what the fuck he's talking about in this part.
Physically. And the brain then just stopped putting the I into the story. But as I just said to Mark, that was not a good way of saying it, because societal things can happen that make the brain change the storyline. I mean, where I started with my reading, my main reading started 40 years ago or something. It would be about 40 years ago when I seriously started reading again. Before, during school, didn't count. Seriously started reading. One of the first books I got was Why Did the Germans Go All Nazi Crazy? Because it just didn't make sense to me. But
Oh, jeez, it's just so obvious. I mean, they got completely ripped off, and they had to blame somebody, and they blamed the Jews. What's so complicated? They got totally reamed in the after the war shenanigans, and unlike every other country that loses a war, they were hit with all these reparation crap, like they had to pay everybody back for everything. And it was so preposterously silly. The country was already in trouble because of the war, and they're basically saying, now you have to be hugely productive and feed us, the world. Give us all this money back. Yeah, too stupid. Anyway, I mean, jeez. Oh, why did the Japanese go to war? Oh, that's right, because we were blockading all of their capacities to survive in the future, taking away all of their energy. They have no internal energy sources. We were starving them, energy starving them, and they were watching the clock ticking to their doom. And they said, well, it's either fight or become a slave to the United States. And they said, fuck it, let's fight.
This is a bit like the Lisa Swamiji Adyashanti problem. It's not obviously a physical, mental damage problem. It's a society nurture problem, and it's covered in the Will Store books. Well, that's what most of skeptics is about. How societal pressures can change the story, basically, and bringing in axioms, post-action justification, which is...
Every conversation you have, every interaction in your life can change your life. You meet a dog that just is so charming, and shit, I mean, almost anything can change the person you are, change your mood, change your attitude, change your philosophy. But yeah, the older you get, the lot harder that's going to be, because you're not going to be able to show up and tell somebody something new. Especially somebody who's read enough books and watched enough TV and paid attention while being alive. Didn't waste all their time playing video games, but was actually interacting in the world and reading this and checking out that and trying to understand this and that and see other things and all that stuff. Look at pictures of the Grand Canyon or this or that. Understand the world they live in. Yeah, you're not probably going to be able to simply or easily tell them something they don't already know.
It's the what did we have yesterday? Cognitive dissonance. To get rid of the cognitive dissonance of everybody else seemingly letting the Nazis go, what do you do? You can stand out there with a placard and get shot, or you can change your story. Get rid of the cognitive dissonance, and you become a Nazi. In short, yeah, it's that powerful. The cognitive dissonance is so nasty for the brain.
I'm just saying. Well, obviously, hate is pretty easy, and again, it's just scapegoating is really easy. So that's sort of the easy way out. It's not the difficult way. It's not like that's the hard road to take. That's the easy road to take. So they took the easy road. Everybody else is doing it, so it becomes kind of, this is, you're almost proud to be part of the club.
Because it makes these feelings in the body which are uncomfortable, and it knows that it can get rid of them by changing the story, simply by changing the story. So it changes the story. And that's all being a Nazi is or was. And that's what so much of this is. So I would imagine that this is what the Lisa thing is. This is what the Adyashanti Swamiji Ramalama Ding Dong is. Exactly the same. The brain has, let's put it this way, subconsciously seen an advantage to having a story where the old Lisa Adyashanti Swamiji becomes the new real Swamiji and does all the stuff. And basically keeps the story going for as long as it can survive in that mode. If it's totally ignored, which it rarely is in this world, or any world, it would probably drop it. But normally they get adored, so it just gets reinforced and it becomes more and more, and the story becomes more and more, and it could be that they are changed by it. Lisa Adyashanti Swamiji, whoever they might be, are now running stories that the eye just doesn't come into anymore, because it just doesn't need it, because it's life, it's homeostasis, as Damasio would say. It's, what do we have it down there, social continuity is guaranteed just by being Swamiji.
Apologies. Yeah, there's just no. I don't see how anybody who doesn't know what comment you're replying to can have any idea what the fuck you're talking about. Yeah, this is just such a pile of disconnected mush. So sorry. I mean, I have to endure it also.
It doesn't need the I anymore. It just needs to maintain the image of Swamiji. So that's all it has to do. The brain, that's all the story the brain has to do. So it does it. So it doesn't need to put the I in anymore. And there you've got yourself an enlightened person, basically. So
it's too silly, right? So I guess he's validating all of this Buddhist mumbo jumbo, the most failed culture in the universe. You want to have a short lifespan and a miserable life. Go live where the Buddhists live, because they are insanely unproductive and useless. I mean, this philosophy doesn't have any substance to it, and it's still a silly religion. Go jump in a fire and you escape purgatory, and everybody else is still going to hell, and you're going to feel good sitting in your, hey, I don't have to do it anymore. While you sentenced your brother and your parents and your children and everybody else to it, though. What the fuck is that? Sorry, too stupid.
Recounting what I said, that it was physical brain jump. It wasn't a that goes on in a brain. It was just like becoming a Nazi. The brain sees an advantage of becoming a Swami. Right, what else did I want to say? I can't quite remember quickly enough.
So again, this whole nonsense that nobody does anything except when they see some advantage or something. Again, that's pretty cynical, pretty stupid, because lots of people do it out of an obligation. Now, you might just call that guilt, but it doesn't matter. The fact is they say, oh, I better go walk back there and pick up that piece of litter I saw on the ground. Or, there's an old lady at this corner. I'll have to take a little extra steps. I'll go over there, help her across the street, and I'll lose 2 minutes of my life. So what? All that happens all the time. Somebody sees a car on the side of the road disabled. They, I really got to get going, but I'd sure want somebody to stop if it was me, so they stop.
So we'll call it quits there, because that's covered quite a lot. I think that does it. I'd like to say more about the post-vaccine, about post-action justification, but really that is, as you've seen, it's just another name for getting rid of cognitive dissonance, and it's
rationalization,
shaking it off. And so I think the most important part of this video is the Nazi angle. Why did it happen? Why did they have to write books on it? And it wouldn't have been in the book, but that's just it. It was cognitive dissonance, which makes the body feel uncomfortable. You can free the body from its uncomfort by becoming a Nazi.
Oh, that's just, like I said, too silly. No, hate is fun, and having somebody to hate is great. Having an excuse, finding a target, and being able to say, target it and shoot it. You're in a war, and you've been fighting, I'm just looking at miles and miles of desert, man. I want something to fucking goddamn shoot. I want to win the war. So you just start looking for anything that looks like a target. And, that's fun. Okay, so that's all it is. Give me something to take my fucking resentment and hatred out on. That's all it was. Give me somebody to punch in the face. And ergo, the punch in the face.
Or pretending to be. And like the Germans pretended to be Nazis, Lisa Adyashanti Swamiji have pretended to be their new enlightened versions. And as long as it works, the brain rocks with it, and that is the new story.
Whatever that whole pile of crap was. Okay, fine. So that one was a clunker. Ugh, let's see if we can do a little better. Alright, so that's whatever it takes. That was crap. Lightning strike. So let's see. Let's hope this one's a little better.
We're going, avalanche. And I notice, I was going to deal with the avalanche comment this morning, but it didn't appear in my other things. And there was a Gary Entropy comment that didn't appear either. So very big hello to Gary Entropy. How things? Yes, life's a bit odd, isn't it? Yeah. And this speed thing, I mean, you've just got to keep up, I think. I would have thought that people like you and I, Gary, would be one of the first to actually give up, because we're a bit...
Right, so this is another different Gary. So just so there's no confusion, he's talking to a person called Gary Entropy, who is more of a nihilist, selfish, fucked hard cunt. Okay.
Life can sod off anyway. But I think you've got to keep up as long as you can. I don't know. I know it's kind of like the treadmill. But I think if it's kind of leading two lives, isn't it? You've got the technological life here, but then we'll be able to jump on our bikes and ride off. And, you know, sod it. Lead both lives at the same time. It seems the best way to go. Anyway, so a big hello, Gary. Avalanche. Sperm cells swim their way to an egg cell with no brain. Now, this is a big thing point. I won't go in. I'll try not to go too deeply into it in this video, but it gets a bit back to the comment about yes, blah blah blah, brains can do this.
Look, the answer to that one is the simple one, where the brain is just a bunch of knee jerks connected to each other in an ordered patterns, ordered layers of sequence. So anything with a knee jerk, you could call it a brain, but it's not going to look like a brain. It's not going to be in one little place and there's its little brain. So a sperm cell has a brain in the sense that it has a bunch of reflexes, a bunch of chemical mechanisms that tell it which way to swim. But it really doesn't do anything much more complicated than swim in a direction. It doesn't have a whole lot of other function except swim for a chemical message being sent by the egg. It's just following the chemical stream.
Cognitive dissonance and this fast thinking kind of animal stuff, but then I kick in and do reasoning and intelligence.
So again, mocking it.
The big doubty thing in my head is bodies, this human body thing, is made up of billions of years of technologies.
And understood. And the really ugly part is it's really sloppy because it glues one little piece at a time. It never builds to the future. It's all about every stone has to justify itself in its placement. You know, if you had to do that when you were making a bridge or a Roman arch or something, no single brick could justify itself. And they'd all just fall down because they could never justify themselves until they're all there. So we can see purpose and make an arch. Nature's going to have a real hard time doing it because the little pieces will never get justified. So anything nature's building is going to be built so much less efficiently. There's going to be so much sloppy, ugly bricks, ugly, sloppy rocks, ugly, everything's going to be just kind of sloppily put together. But the other thing nature does is it does so much of it that the sloppiness has a certain survivability. It's structurally sound. It's just ugly as fuck.
Sperm cells swim their way to an egg with no brain. Why do they do it? How do they do it is more to the point. Totally acknowledged. I'll go kind of what I would imagine for an explanatory purpose, one better, to bacteria. So we're talking old technology again for between eukaryotes and prokaryotes, isn't it? 4 and 2 billion years ago, you got the bacteria, and then you got the bacteria with cell inside. We had this about 10 years ago as a video of a white blood cell going after there's a word for it, an enemy in the blood.
Like a paramecium. The point is, the white blood cell is the very high-tech battleship. It's not the crude bacteria. So it's a very high-tech machine versus the really crude bacteria cell. So the white blood cell usually has a huge technical advantage.
System, and it was hunting it around, and the unknown was hiding behind other blobs, but the white blood cell, like Pac-Man, was always after it. And yes, our anthropomorphic sizing brains go, it knows what it's doing, but of course it knew what it was fucking doing. But it was doing it, and it's been doing that sort of thing for 2 billion years. That is what bacteria could do 2 billion years ago. They could sense something and then go to an address book of whether it was on that address book or not. If it was in the address book, it didn't go after it, Pac-Man, and try and kill it. If it wasn't in the address book, it'd go and kill it. 2 billion years ago.
Right, but none of its technique is at all very evolved. Its technique is still crude. It just harpoons it. It just, the method of the capture is not chess. It's checkers. So that, I think that just has to be emphasized, that it doesn't have a sophisticated capacity to do a lot of different things. It can turn left, it can turn right. It doesn't do much. It can't do any forethought type of strategy. It doesn't do any, I'm thinking 3 moves ahead. None of that is involved. So it doesn't, of course, do good hunting. It does very crude hunting. When you do it often enough, when your adversary is really dumb, you don't need a very smart strategy. So you can look like a very good fisherman if there's a lot of fish.
So what you've got there is a thing with a memory that acts on that memory. So you've got a proto thing 2 billion years ago to build a brain, basically. What do the modern call it? Leveraging the old technology or something. It's something you can believe in, because a bacteria could do it 2 billion years ago. Vaccination now, I know for the COVID, it's RNA and whatever. It's a bit more different. But what's a vaccine? You put it in, it knows what it's to do, because it remembers what it's not to attack, and so it attacks other things.
Yeah, so again, that's giving it a little too much credit, in my opinion. There's lots of code in a DNA molecule, so obviously there can be a lot of storage, but it's still just a chemical signature in one way or another. It's still just recognizing that you have, 4 parts per million of arsenic, in your skin or something, and those 4 parts per million, are enough for something to identify you chemically. And that's what it's identifying. It's identifying a chemistry. That's it. It's what's the name of it? Famous Dr. Ehrlich's magic bullet kind of thing.
So it does its attacking thing, and when it's attacked it or not, it remembers what to attack and what not to attack, and acts accordingly.
It doesn't remember. It still has to be something your genetic code has to learn. So I think that's pushing it again, but whatever.
It's a micro version of one of these. You can upscale that idea through sperm cells, and up through all the different parts of the body, which are obviously made up of the mind. How does the bacteria do it? Why does could a bacteria 2 billion years ago sense what's out there and know whether to go for it or not? It could do it 2 billion years ago. Yeah? It's because of the molecular or even atomic interactions.
Get anything out of this?
It's not anthropomorphizing, it's biology or chemistry or physics, depending which way you want to look at it, how small you want to go. It did it because of basic things. Which is the most basic? Is it chemistry or physics? I don't know. Nuclear.
Amazing. He doesn't have the right answer to that one. I mean, obviously physics is more basic because it's electrons and protons, frankly. And you can't get any more basic than charge and those functions. But anyway, disappointing they can't figure that out. They has so little knowledge of that. Should be well understood that physics is the most elemental science. And the rest of them are built on concepts established by physics. What else do I want to say about this? Yeah, so I don't like that he is pushing the anthropomorphizing a bit by there's evolution on all kinds of different levels. So the chemistry, the atoms evolve, the elements into the chemistry. The chemistry evolves into the organs, the blah 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 blah. So and on different levels they can have similar functions. So the chemistry can create something that's a reflex. Okay, so that's kind of obvious. The chemistry in one place can go to another place and trigger a response. There's the reflex. So you can have a chemical reflex, but the chemical reflex, it's a whole new level once you're able to do the integrated circuit. So you can have the transistors switching, and you can have a lame computer, or you can have the integrated circuit do the switching and have a very sophisticated computer. Big difference between a brain and a bunch of chemical reflexes. Really big difference.
Well, I don't know what the most basic is, and you just get smaller and smaller, but it did it. So it's easy to imagine how a gut works, how a liver works, how a heart works, how a brain works, because it's leveraging older technologies. And that's obviously the only way it is going to work as a body, because we here are saying there's no God that can just go pazam. And while it's doing human pazams, it's also doing rats and aardvarks, If we're going to go with the no God idea, we've got to go that it's built up, Darwin came up with an idea like this, built up over billions of years, just leveraging old technologies into more complex systems. So the sperm cell swims their way to the egg.
To be technical, Darwin didn't come up with the idea of anything but the mechanisms, natural selection. Those were the key words. What science lacked wasn't the idea that we evolved, but what it lacked was some understanding of how we could have evolved. And it was that simple connection of words to say something as simple as, the selection processes and the redundancy and the long periods of time over which all this takes place. So it's only when you can understand that this process has been taking place for millions of years that you can understand how evolution is a possible answer.
With no brain. Why? Because it's just an old technology that's been incorporated into a bigger, newer technology and is allowed to stay there and work because it works. Because that's what Darwinian evolution is. And it's the same for the bacteria, and it'll be the same for the brain. I'm saying this because we could, it's going to confuse matters, but we can think about life on Earth as opposed to life on all the other planets in the universe. How many times has it happened? Or you can say in the primordial soup there's so many different things. How many times has RNA happened? How many times has DNA happened? We're talking fucking rare here.
Right. So we know that this thing that happens doesn't even happen here. And it's covered with RNA. It's covered with DNA all over the place. Lots of building blocks, lots of parts. And it doesn't even reoccur in this soup of parts. So clearly it's not something just poofs, just happens regularly. We can't make it happen with all of our technology. We can't force it to happen with all of our technology. And the plant is literally got millions or trillions of square miles of body parts, and the watch never pops out. The DNA watch, the new DNA configuration.
I'll just go that far. And this is what I'm thinking. The sperm, the bacteria could do what it could do 2 billion years ago. Then we get to sperm cells and we get to humans and human brains and what they can do. Now, we're accepting, for our moment in these mystic videos, that it does fast thinking, cognitive dissonance, comes up with ideas of an eye and protecting the eye and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, we're kind of accepting that. The bit I'm not accepting is the reasoning and the intelligence that's some sort of a different system. Now, I'm saying, basically, that the cognitive dissonance and all that shit is based on sperm cells and bacteria. It's just leveraging old systems. This, the reasoning and intelligence, to me, stinks of, it's a whole different thing. It's a different technology. That the I uses the different technology, and I go, it just stinks.
Nah, or whatever. It's clearly a different technology, the evolution. You couldn't do the same brain with chemistry because the size of the brain would have to be insanely big, and the structure would just fall apart. It just wouldn't be able to get the chemicals to the places and all that stuff. So you need the neuron. You need the electrical conduit. Without that, you can't have a brain that has billions of connections, billions of knee jerks.
Because it just stinks of last video arrogance. That there are two thinking technologies: the one that we accept, the animal one, and the one that most people accept, the one the eye does.
All right, so this is too silly too, because we know the animals, by definition, don't include parameciums and sperm cells. That animals come in all kinds of varieties, from whatever, a fish, our ancestor, and all the octopuses, all kinds of different mechanisms, different branches of this evolution tree thing. So it would be kind of silly to say we can't make rational concessions to the fact that we're a lot more related to some than we are to others, and that our functionality is going to be different. But I would argue that the idea of being feeling is very old. Feelings are a very old function. The fish that we hadn't grown out of yet, the fish that are our pre-ancestors, before the Adam and Eve fish, were doing it. That's how old it is. Take a little break. Yeah, I'm back. I guess. So yeah, let's do some more.
The soul I can do reasoning and intelligence and all that sort of stuff.
So again, it really can do it. It can recognize colors, it can recognize shapes, it can recognize all kinds of forms. It really can do a lot of math, a lot of figuring, a lot of set modeling. It can put things in matrices and understand the three-dimensional shapes. I mean, to deny that we are doing this thing, and that part of doing that is recognizing our place in a maze of the universe and understanding our role and our place and what can happen and what it all leads to. And that's all what we can model. And that's a profound thing that we can do, and he's just talking about like it's taking a poo. No, it's more than that. It's more than just dumping.
Just stinks to me. Absolutely stinks. Yeah? Because that means the lightning has struck twice.
No. The evolution lightning happens all the time. So, I mean, the fact that you create processes that are mimicking the evolutionary process, the process of creating structures that are recurrent, like the beach sand getting eroded, and then the beach sand comes, even the moon is creating circumstances that fish take advantage of, lay their eggs at high tide, and then the next high tide washes their young into the sea,
Two, the body has developed with two, at least, different thinky systems. One that we kind of are accepting here, the cognitive dissonant biff-boff-biff-baff system. But then there's the idea of this reasoning system that I've heard no...
Oh, come on, it's all the same brain, so what the fuck? Yeah, fuck all that. So fuck if you're going to make a separation between these systems. They are different things, though, so I guess that's the part. He's still saying they are the same thing the brain is doing. And I'd say that's clearly wrong, because obviously one is for the purpose of entertaining the other. The whole process of learning is feedback, and the feedback is because of an indirect interaction. Like I was the feeling computer, and you are the thinking computer. And you think, and I push on your screen as you're thinking and give you irritation. I'm doing something the process I'm doing is different than the process you're doing. The feeling mechanism is just doing its, assigned value based on similarities. It's square, it's round, it's blue, it's red. I mean, this clearly happens to us, that certain things happen to us in our life, and it changes what colors we like and dislike because of the color of the hat, some third grade teacher was wearing. It's a powerful influence on our conditioning.
Real justification for except a load of eyes that say, I do it, which to me is the arrogance of I'm so fucking clever.
So there's just a fact that, say, again, back to a chess analogy, that Gary Fisher is so clever. His brain works really well. It's really good at doing this modeling thing. He's spent a lot of time looking at models and breaking them down and seeing how they function. He's found all kinds of shortcuts. And one of the shortcut models that he can handle is a chessboard. But he can handle lots of other models. I'm sure he's very fast at Rubik's Cubes.
I don't need to go back into the religion thing where humans are special and they can do this special thing where pigs and apes can't.
They can't do the special thing of language and acquiring all of the symbolic representations we have. So if we could give them language, that is, we could slow down their maturation, I would argue. If we could make them take as long as it takes us to grow up, I think they could learn languages. Languages are learned really easily by children. This is kind of a fact everybody knows. And if we had the time to teach them a language, they might not be quite as capable as the average human. But yes, once they have a language, then they understand, like Helen Keller, they can put it all falls into place. And all of a sudden, they're not animals anymore.
And science just doesn't go that way. I just don't think there are two different systems. I think there's one system.
Okay, well, I don't see any justification for calling the two systems the same thing when they're so obviously different and they so obviously have to work in tandem to each other. They obviously have to be distinct, and one has to not be able to control the other, or we would just cheat the system all over the place. We would just manufacture our feelings with our thoughts. So obviously they can't be working together. They have to work opposed to each other for them to have any integrity, for the system to have any integrity. The democracy of the brain has to have non-dissonance for it to say a fact is a fact. It has to listen to the other parts, and it can't control what the other parts are saying, then it would make anything a fact. And obviously we're not allowed to do that.
But, I'm open to... But there's no... Because this reasoning shit and this intelligence shit is based on the I shit.
Oh, so it's just such a stupid thing to say. I don't get it. I just don't get. He does it in every part of his life. He uses his intelligence to manufacture better results. And yet he claims that's not a meaningful function. It just doesn't make any sense. Of course, that's the brilliance of the brain. That's what makes it a good thing to have one. Oh, fuck.
Basically. And the I shit is a story that's just a story.
So again, there is no I shit. There is a fact that I'm a serial number. I have a serial number, dumbass. I'm like any other device. You can get one that's flawed and broken, or you can get one that works. They all have model numbers. Yes, I'm model human. You could even say 20th century American human, special model. And but the rest of it is a serial number, and something, the guy could have just pushed it a little too hard, or the wires got a little short, the solder's bad, blah, 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 and this one doesn't work as good as that one. It's just a fact. I just can't understand how he can do this to the model of reality and pretend it's not a fact that the individual computers function in better and less good ways. That they're less good at being calculators. They're less good at getting right answers. They're less good at good strategies for the game of chess. The game of life, like the game of chess, has good and stupid strategies. Fact.
Yes, I do accept that the cognitive dissonance shit is just another story as well. But that cognitive dissonance shit, which sits well with me and doesn't sit well with others, yeah, it's a story, but it's I accept it. It's the one I go with. It's the one I go with, and I can't see justification for this one, except a load of eyes say they can do it, but they can't even say what the eye is. You know, this one just is
Brain. Individual, uniquely programmed, millions of permutations in terms of the way it was programmed. I mean, millions of keystrokes to make your life. Your life is billions of keystrokes of code going in. Keystroke, just, an unbelievable amount of data collected. So, of course, we're all changed differently by the data that comes in. Why is this a mystery? Well, why is this something to debate, the existence of our individual function, when it's so obvious that we're not exactly the same toaster? We're obviously not the same toaster.
It's got the smell of arrogance all the way up and down and through it, as opposed to sperm cells can swim their way to an egg with no brain. Yeah, bacteria can.
It does have a brain. It's just not the same kind of central processing unit. It's still transistors and capacitors, so to speak. It's still a computer. It's just a really shitty one.
Memory, it knows what to hunt down and kill. That I can see.
It doesn't know it's even killing. Okay, it just follows the scent, follows the vapor trails, and does the reflexive action. It doesn't know. It might think it's making love. I'm injecting my penis into it to kill it, but oh no, it's not a killing. I'm making love. It's come on.
Leveraging up into fast thinking. I think that the slow thinking is just a variation of fast thinking. I don't think there are two actual thinkings.
Well, I'd say clearly, I guess I would argue that you have to concede that the crust of the bread is different than the bread. So the fast thinking is the cheap generalizations and averaging, and that the technical formulas that lie underneath it are different. They're better. They're a lot more precise. So it's always better to go through take the time to get the technical answer. But better in the sense that we always have to measure our time, so we don't have time to get the technically correct answer all the time. We can't spend 4 days figuring out whether I should leave in 5 minutes. Should I leave in 5 minutes or 3 minutes? Oh, I don't have 4 days to think about it.
I think that's just academic waffle from Kahneman. There is a difference, and it can be academically noticed. But I don't think there are two different thinking systems. The lightning hasn't struck twice.
So whatever. They're not different thinking systems, but they're bread. Yeah, there's crust and there's bread. So there's some analogy like that. One is just the foam. One is, it's probably better to find some sort of electrical type analogy. But one is the harmonic vibration that comes out of all the little vibrations. Something like that. But it's noisy. And one of them's the pure note. Maybe you just want to hear the violin out of the symphony or something. That's probably a bad example because the symphony is so orchestrated.
It's taken, say, 2.5 billion years to get from bacteria that can do this sort of thing to this that can do this sort of thing. I'm not seeing, with sperm cells in between, I'm not seeing.
So again, sperm cells really weren't in between, so that's the funny part. The sperm cell is essentially incapable of evolving. There's no root for its evolution because it can't send a message to the past to say, fix your genetics because this worked. So every sperm cell that does something unique is an accident, but it's an accident that it's really hard to repeat. So that's the problem.
The parallel second system that leads to the I and the reasoning. I think that the brain just does this sort of system and then comes up with a story that introduces an I that says it can do this other sort of.
So, I mean, it's kind of like I said, these are really clear demarcations in evolution. You know, the fundamental difference between the living form of a living being in the form of a single-celled organism and then the living being created out of a village of organisms. I mean, every one of our neurons is a living cell. It might as well be a paramecium. It might as well be a microbe. It's just been, you know, all of its legs have been cut off, but it's still the same thing as a little microbe. It's still a multi-organal cell, and it could have legs and it could walk around, but obviously that's not the role it's playing. So it's lost its legs, like a snake. It's shed its legs. It's shed its independence, and is now a slave to a colony. And that's a huge difference. Brick is alive, a paramecium. Building is alive as a building, not as a paramecium, but as a building. So that's, you know, you have to concede life happened twice. First, it happened in the formation of a cell that was animated and had intelligence in the sense that it created reflexes. And then the building itself became something capable of having reflexes. Lightning struck twice. Like I said, I'm not calling it lightning because I'm saying evolution is the most natural thing that can happen to chemistry. It's a very natural thing, evolution.
But I think this other sort of stuff is just this stuff with a fancier story wrapped around it.
All right, so that's kind of silly. This isn't all fancy stories. There's a serious reality to being able to collect facts and information and sort it and create a working model of it. That's a huge advance in functionality to understand the game, to understand every part of the engine. Huge advance. But he just wants to diminish it all so he can go to some Buddhism bullshit of just be. Or some kind of horseshit like that. Alright, so I guess this is the last one here.
Right. So this is a video from Mark Capor. And it makes me think, actually, if it's funny how life goes. Marty said last night about how he's got his camera and light boom set up. I was thinking, well, now that it's an absolute doddle to upload things, I could do more videos. I could even leave the camera there on a boom and link it straight to the computer, and everything would just be pressed up button and go, as opposed to I take everything away and bring it all back. And normally in that time I'll have time to work out what I'm going to say in a video. But in a way, I'm going to. Mark brings up the word arrogance, and I think I'm going to be a bit of self-arrogance here and say that it would be worthwhile. We are down to how many people, 60 odd, that watch these videos. But the arrogance is that I would say that I am a decent resource because I have done this learning for 40 years. It's not just like Mark, the first line is, hey, you're dissing my idol there, who happens to be Adyashanti. It just so happens that I've done my share of Adyashantiing, which would have been, I don't know, how many years ago, 13, 14, 15 years ago. I don't know, when did he kick off?
Yes, so that's the joke here, really, right? Is that this mystic part really is a reality of this guy's function. He has a history in it, and it still lingers. The residue, the sticky residue of seeking truth in silly places. He still has some of that stink stuck on him. Some of that dead corpse smell is still there.
When he was just working on, when he was a bike repair boy. And there's Gangaji, who I went to after that. And in the other time I've read, you've seen I've read so many books about so many things. I should be a decent resource for people to use, basically, because I go through these phases or crazes. And
right, but the point is you don't have a single clue when it comes to any of the stuff that really matters. So you have a lot of technical knowledge, but you can't buckle your seatbelt. You haven't got the you didn't get the gist of it. You got lost in the bullshit.
In a way, yes, because I get in there, and if I'm reading Adyashanti or listening to Adyashanti, I'm into it. Lisa, I'm into it. Quantum physics, I'm into it. History, biology, Buddhism, whatever it might be, I'm into it at the time. And I just sponge it up. And I can't actually ever remember any of it at all until somebody kind of mentions it. And then it can click and memories come back. And I can generally make a sensible reply. So to Mark, I started writing a reply. But I wasn't...
Yeah, well, again, I'd say there's some huge dysfunctions. So from my perspective, I don't see any logical continuity between how you've put your information together. You've squandered a lot of it.
Getting anywhere, because I don't really have a reply that is ready-made, as it were. And it was...
I think he's preparing them to say, don't bother making videos because I won't watch your videos. I'm only interested in what I have to say. I'm really not interested in what anybody else has to say. It's pretty much what he's trying to say here. Don't bother making videos. I won't watch them.
So much coming, so I thought I'd just turn the camera on and see if it comes when the camera is turned on. So, hey, you're dissing my idol there, Adyashanti, presumably. So I say, yeah, don't worry, I've been there. I like the challenge of that, which is good. I like people that like the challenge of being challenged, enjoy it. See, that's in a way why I've gone on and on and on and on, is because I haven't got stuck on any of these things and said, this is it, I've got it. I've gone, yeah, okay, and then been attracted by another thing. It's non-stuckness, which is, it's nothing that I have done. It just happens to be what I am. So it's very excellent that Mark likes the challenge of that. You make me wonder why I resonate with him so much. But I think that goes on to, well, if you're a nice person, what the world calls a nice person, one would. And it goes on, I'll go on with the rest of the comment because, I mean, presumably there are a lot of us here. I'm probably the worst of the lot that, people can go and drop fucking dead as far as I'm concerned. But for most people, they're nice and they would like the best for most people. If cognitive dissonance, which I like to call arrogance, you see, in a way I'd like to argue with that, but it is right.
Oh, it's just silly. Cognitive dissonance is arrogance. It's just, what the hell is that? That's just incoherent ribble.
It's right in a way that, you see, these words, like I used in this morning's video, reasoning, intelligence and things like this, and arrogance, I've got to go back a few videos and say, look, they are just words when it comes down to it. And cognitive dissonance is just words. So, again, it's not wrong, but it's not often useful to get into the minutiae of just discussing words, because you get the cognitive dissonance there of intelligence, reasoning, arrogance, and then you can't go at that because the person, we'll go on. Arrogance, if cognitive dissonance, which I like to call arrogance, is the rule of the day, and our world looks and feels and works the way it does because of that, which I think we've got to say it's looking that way. What would a world look and feel and work like when the default was, say, cognitive assonance? I'm not sure that as a word that works, the assonance. But actually, assonance, it brings it closer, but it's not the opposite of dissonance, I don't think. But yeah, whatever the opposite of dissonance would be. If, let's say, because this is what I see in the comment, Mark, is that you're saying that if everybody was like Adyashanti or Gangaji or any of these gurus that don't put the I in, so don't have to protect the I, because that's what the cognitive dissonance is. The brain has the I saying that it has the knowledge of whatever it is. And then the I then the brain has to write the story for the I to protect the knowledge that the brain is saying that the I has. It sounds convoluted, but it really isn't. So when you knock Adyashanti, you become no I, like Adyashanti. There is no arrogance because the brain is not writing the story where an I has any held views. It has view.
So just ignoring the fact that there's real logic and conversation about the connections that things have, and we can dissect the connections. We can go through all of those connections and say this connection, this connection, this connection adds up to 14. We can show the chain of reasoning that gets you to a conclusion about what's a good answer. Should I step on the gas pedal 15 times? No, because every time you step on the gas pedal, some fuel's going into the carburetor, and you'll create too high a gas mixture, and there won't be enough oxygen to fire that gas mixture, and you won't be able to create the pressure and the ignition and blah, 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 blah. So you can go through an explanation of why that won't work. That's essentially the most profound function that we have, is that we can argue facts and point out how some things don't work. Just even about floating a boat or simple mechanics, how the lift on the airplane wing works. Well, would it help if I put balloons on the airplane? Or, you can explain why, no, that won't work because they'll move behind the airplane, and so they won't provide any lift. Whatever.
It does not have held views, so it does not have to protect them. So there's no cognitive dissonance because there's no discomfort in giving Adyashanti all his due. There's no discomfort in Adyashanti's body because the brain has set up the story, but there's nothing to protect. So there's no cognitive dissonance. It just accepts everything as it is.
All right, so that's all just talk too, right? So all this Buddhism crap is always just talk, right? Even when the guy's lighting himself on fire, there's absolutely no evidence he's not horrifically in pain and going through terrible anguish. All there's evidence for is that he has trained his body not to be reflexive anymore. He's turned off the reflex. So that's all there's evidence of, is that he has disciplined his reflexes. So it's like one of those guys standing in front of the Queen's house where they're not supposed to laugh, with their funny hats. They're not supposed to laugh. So they train not to be capable of reflexively reacting. So they turn off the reflexes. That's not a fucking accomplishment. That doesn't mean he's living in nirvana or bliss. That's just all horse shit. So, they're selling a really bad drug, okay, because it won't free you. It won't liberate you from worry and all this other crap. It really won't. It's just horse shit. And it's just something silly people feed on. That's why there has to be gurus for it. Because common people won't testify to how it works. Because it doesn't work. And they just keep being told, the guru can do it. The guru can do it. It's just a Jesus story. Miracle, miracle. Pray the right way and you'll get the miracle. And then it just fools a bunch of people thinking that they're going to solve the problem by praying enough. Or killing enough lambs, or sacrificing enough birds or chickens or some other bullshit. Just a terribly stupid and ignorant thing for human beings to waste their time on. Gurus. Ugh.
Yep, I don't think Adyashanti would mind if I said that. Or any of these real gurus that what a real cool man. That's basically it.
Gurus.
The brain is not writing an I into the story, so there's no I that needs protecting, because that's all the cognitive dissonance is, that manifests as what can be called arrogance. So if we'll have cognitive assonance as the opposite of what Adyashanti is, or a guru, or an enlightened person is. They have cognitive. See, it's giving it a positive name. I prefer just to go with there's no cognitive dissonance because there's no I in the story. Because there's no I in the story, there's no need to protect. So there's no cognitive dissonance because it's the I that is in the story having the ideas. And the I then has to protect its I. There has to be a story developed where the I is protecting its ideas. So as soon as the I goes, there's no cognitive dissonance, there's cognitive assonance. But there's no arrogance because there's no story.
Oh, God, this is just such a waste of time. So anyway, so apparently the mystic is in some sort of indestructible bliss where, of course, he's obsessively and insanely sensitive and incapable of enduring any verbal abuse of any kind. It's just nonsense that he's above it all. He's not even close. Oh, okay, I made a little mistake there. I forgot to hit the button. played a little bit of it. All this I talk, blah, 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 like it's a real thing, and he's, talking about it. It just doesn't mean anything. The fact is we do personally feel, we do personally think. That happens. Calling it I-ness, who cares what we call it? It is personal.
Needs protecting. Yeah, I think I didn't know what I was going to say in this video, but I'm reasonably happy that I've got that far. So what would the world look like if...
So this I that needs to be protected from dissidence, which, again, a lot of us thrive on dissidence. A lot of us love the challenge of finding solutions, of being challenged by a conflict, a problem. It doesn't add up, it doesn't match. Solve it, solve it, solve it, solve it. This is part of what people live for, is problem solving. This resolving the distance through manipulation of the environment. People love this. They love curing something's disease. They love fixing things. It's almost silly to say this dissonance isn't part of the good function.
If imagine you're firing off my video of a couple of videos ago. In 10,000 years, if people went over to what we're saying, I'm saying, you're saying, we're saying, whatever, would it lead to more Adyashantis? Or is the I story genetic, as in it will automatically happen? Or is it more nurture? Is it more societal? I don't know.
Clearly there's no huge obstacle to people recognizing their brains once they understand how their iPhone works, how different technology works. They will understand the similarities between how we work, and we're all just running operating systems. Yoo-hoo, ho-ho, Twinkle Dinkle, all different operating systems. It's kind of funny. The Android have all these silly names: ice cream cone, whatever, Fun Pop. Yeah, that's what we're running. We're running different software, and some of us have slightly different hardware, but that's all we are. We're just a function of a type of phone that has certain features, and that is not hard. That's not miles and miles of striving and thinking to get there. We've only had a few years living with it. And it's already blended into a huge number of brains that, it's looking a lot like that. They have it's already in the movies, the Borg, the idea that we're just slaves to role-playing, blah, blah, blah. All these themes are already in there. It's already in the conversation. So, 10,000 years? No, I don't think so. 10,000 hours. Yeah.
I think, as you'll get from the Will Store books, or any books on the subject, quite frankly, a body is set up as a baby with, I was say proclivities, but it's more possibilities. No, it's not. It's, how would you explain it? Capabilities based on probabilities, as in it's capable of reactions. It's set up genetically to react, but society then dictates what it should react to.
So society doesn't dictate it. Society accidentally stinks on it. Society accidentally farts in its direction. And then in some other child's direction, it drops a whole bunch of candy. In some other child's direction, it dumps a whole bunch of responsibilities. In everybody's direction, it does some other stupid thing. It squirts some breast milk. And that is, and it's all byproduct. Society doesn't do anything on purpose. And even when they're doing it on purpose, their theory of function is so bad that they'll never get the result they intend.
About the only ones, I think there are only two. It's don't fall down, and is it snakes? No, it's loud noises is the other one. That is absolutely genetic. But when it comes to snakes, there's a predisposition to be wary of things. And if society says be wary of snakes, it's very easy for the brain to be wary of snakes. Or if it's spiders, be wary of spiders. But if nobody in your baby, young person upbringing makes you scared of beetles, spiders, or snakes, you won't be. But you have
I would argue I don't think that's entirely true. So, when they do these baby experiments, I think those are one of the image things. Like babies don't walk off at the edge of a cliff. Babies don't do certain things. And those images are... there is a real instinctive reaction. It's not very strong, though, so it's easily overcome.
Easy button to press. The button is genetically there to press for be scared ofs and many other things. So I can imagine there is a button there to press for arrogant cognitive dissonance, protect the eyes. I imagine it's
so everybody else is arrogant. He's not. It's just sure.
It's there. So I could go with there is a possibility that it could develop over thousands of years that people stop the I story, because you know that is exactly what education is. It's all I story. If people stopped it, yeah, why not? Yes, the world in 10,000 years could be totally harmonious. Why not? Yes, why not?
Just total bullshit. Obviously, it can't be unless we're all exactly the same organism. If we get rid of all the diversity, which not going to happen, and somehow all the iPhones will get along. No, it's not going to happen.
Because
they'll all share the pretty women. Yeah, not going to happen.
Let's say that the enlightened people, the Adyashantis of the world, has shown the way. It can be done.
Oh, pile of crap. Just disgusting. These shysters just bilking billions of dollars out of people, or millions of dollars out of suckers, with their phony and fake enlightenment. Yuck. Just snake oil bullshit.
The brain can do it. And if the brain can do it once, you can guarantee that it can be done for en masse. So, Mark, I say yes. Why not? Yes, it can be done. Yeah.
Baby talk. Goo goo, gaw gaw. All right, so that was these three were pretty horrible. So, he dissed me a bit, and his video sucked. So I can honestly diss him back by just pointing out how these videos were so uselessly trivial and full of gobbledygook that they couldn't mean anything to anyone. Couldn't have advanced anybody's chess game in any way whatsoever. So try again, Mystic. That was crap. So anyway, that's enough of a video, I guess. So disappointing, but that's you gotta take the good with the bad. So that's unfortunately it's the way life comes at the current moment. It's all the bad with the less bad, or something like that. The bad with the worse, and, So anyway, till the next time, this has been a DoNotGod.com video presentation and such.